talking about youth issues about vaping around school. I'm going to be asking some students about their opinion about the current issue taking our school by storm. I'm also going to be talking to a health professional about the risks of youth vaping and what can be done to stop the rise and help our youth.
What are short and long-term health effects of vaping, especially for young people?
There are both short and long-term effects on young people for vaping. Short-term effects, well, there's a few. So, vaping products contain quite a bit of nicotine, which can lead to addiction and dependence. That would be problem number one. Problem number two is obviously you inhale when you vape, and this can cause irritation to the lungs and the airways, leading to sort of wheezy, coughing illnesses, difficulty breathing. Interestingly, different flavoured vapes cause different injuries to the lung dependent on which flavour of the vape you're smoking. Cardiovascular effects, that means the heart. Nicotine in vaping products increases your heart rate and your blood pressure and just causes a little bit of extra strain early in age. Irritation of the mouth and throat can cause a sore throat and a dry mouth. And it can also affect your thinking, your cognitive function, coordination, increasing the risk of accidents, especially if you're learning to drive or operating heavy machinery or tools. There are longer term effects which are kind of similar. There's lung damage. So the chronic use of vaping products can lead to a vaping related lung injury and decreased lung function forever. Vaping has been linked to the increased risk of developing diseases like chronic bronchitis and emphysema, which is what we see in middle-aged and elderly that have been addicted to smoking. Cancer. There's some studies suggesting that it may increase the risk of developing cancer, although it's quite new on the market, vaping, so we just have to see how many people pop their clogs from vaping due to cancer. And then mental health effects. If you get addicted to something and then you try to stop something, it can lead to other issues such as anxiety, depression, or other mental health disorders. Although some people think that the fact that you're vaping may be triggered by an underlying mental health disorder and that vaping is part of the self-obsessed cure to try and improve your mental health. So overall, the health effects for young people are still being looked at, but it's clear that it's got some serious health concerns and consequences, especially when you started at a young age. It's important to be aware of the risks and make sensible decisions, informed decisions about what you're doing to your health.
What are the addictive properties of the nicotine and other chemicals in vaping products, and how quickly can young people become addicted?
When inhaled, it gets into the bloodstream and reaches your brain within seconds, and it releases a substance in the brain called dopamine, which is a substance that makes you feel happy, makes you feel pleasure, makes you feel rewarded. Over time, the brain becomes dependent on nicotine to function normally, and this leads to addiction. Young people can be addicted to nicotine in quite a short period, often within a matter of weeks, because you've got developing brains. The adolescent brain is more vulnerable to the effects of nicotine, unlike my aging, shrinking brain, and it becomes more hooked more quickly than the adult brain. Also, the fruity flavours and the appealing advertising and marketing around vaping products make them more attractive and appealing to young people, increases the likelihood of addiction.
Are there any known links between vaping and the use of traditional cigarettes or other drugs? Does vaping lead to the use of other substances?
Well, I'm not sure. Some people suggest that vaping may be a gateway to traditional cigarette smoking and other drug use. Some studies have found that adolescents who vape, they're more likely to go on and smoke cigarettes or use other substances compared to those who don't. One study published in the journal of the American Medical Association Children's Journal found that teenagers who used e-cigarettes were more likely to start smoking traditional cigarettes within a year compared with non-users. And another study in the Journal of Drug and Alcohol Dependence found that young adults who vaped are more likely to use marijuana, and other illicit drugs compared with those who did not vape.
What are the best ways to talk to young people about the risks of vaping and encouraging them to quit?
To talk to young people about the risks of vaping, first of all, you need them to listen, to encourage them to quit. It is important to have honest and open conversations with them. Here's some tips. Tell them about the health risks. Allow them to find out and search for those health risks themselves, so they can understand it can cause lung damage, addiction, and long-term health effects. Use examples and stories to help them understand the consequences of vaping. Encourage questions. Allow you to express concerns about why you vape. And provide resources and support for stopping. Counselling services, maybe other people that you know have stopped vaping, and they can help you do the same. Oh, gotta go!
Now we'll hear from some students who have personal experience with vaping around Christ College. Have you ever vaped at school or at home?
Sometimes.
Have you seen or heard any other students vaping around school?
Yeah, I have seen and heard of quite a few people vaping around school, particularly in just bathrooms and houses. And it's not just year 13s and year 12s. It's also like the younger years, like year 9 and through to 11. So yeah, it is. I think a lot of people would have heard about it around school.
Do you think it's getting too excessive at school?
I think it can be very excessive just for the amount of people that have started doing it, and I think there needs to be more punishments and more people getting caught, because I think if it carries on too much, it's going to be very bad for the school and the community.
Good morning. My name is Gabriel Bevan and I'm a Year 11 student from Christ College, and my investigative journalism report is on why you should send your son to boarding school. During my research, I interviewed Franklin Barry, who is the student head of boarding for Christ College for 2024, Mr. Vink, the deputy principal and head of student care, and Mark Cox, who is a member of the Christ College board, went to boarding school himself and has a son attending boarding school right now.
To start off my investigation, I talked to Mr. Vink about what he thinks the disadvantages of boarding school were. Here is what he had to say.
In terms of the disadvantages, the huge one is being away from home. You know, if you come from a safe, loving, caring environment, then that's a huge disadvantage, because of course you love your parents and you love your family and you want to be near them, and they want you. So that's the huge disadvantage, and we can't replace that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a school and an organisation, and while we try to build positive relationships with the kids and create an environment where they can be themselves, at the end of the day, you can't beat a family home that's positive and engaging and for the kids.
Then I asked him about the advantages of boarding school, and this is what he said.
Much like the first one, I guess, it's allowing kids to be able to grow, it's allowing kids to be able to experience different things that they may not be able to access from their small community or a different nation if they're international students, or simply it might just be, there might have been disaffection or disruption in the household for some reason or another, and it provides a stable, consistent atmosphere for kids that they just need that at this time in their life, which the household may not be able to provide.
Now, a common reason parents don't send their son to boarding school is that their child might get homesick. So I talked to Franklin Barry about how kids are supported in boarding school if they are feeling homesick.
There's heaps of ways that boys are supported if they are feeling homesick. Clearly it's a very frequent way to feel. Most people come when they're year 9, so they're only young, and most boys have their parents around this time. But at boarding school, there's heaps of things in place. There's boarding house masters, tutors, the boys around you, everyone is supportive, and there's lots of ways that you can be encouraged throughout your time.
At www.hotchkiss.org, they have an article called The 7 Benefits of Boarding School, in which they say learning and living among a diverse group of peers has potential to lead to disagreements. Yet, this dynamic paves a way for broadened worldviews and social maturity. Students learn valuable life lessons about connection and conflict. As a result, they are often more socially prepared and ready to embrace a world full of different people with contrasting points of view. Boarding school often leads to stronger sense of community. But to finish off my investigation, I then asked the same question to Mark Cox and Franklin Barry. The question was, why should you send your son to boarding school?
Schools, for me, school's not just about education, which is really important, but it's all about getting kids prepared for life and all those life skills that are required, in any venture you do beyond school needs to be able to get on with people that you not necessarily be your first choice of people, and it's that skill set, that independence. So you're not, you're getting a good, you can stand on your own 2 feet when you do get out.
I think boarding school adds a whole another layer to someone's education. For me, it's given me a chance to get away from home, probably become more independent as a boy, and it sets you up well for life and your stuff after school. You get to know heaps of people, which you wouldn't as much probably at a day boy school. It might take longer, whereas in a boarding school, you're living with the people, and it forces you to sort of learn those skills earlier and quicker.
TheGlobalScholars.com have an article quite similar to Hotchkiss called The 7 Great Advantages of Boarding School, and in which they say that studies have shown that compared to average students, boarding school students succeeded at significantly higher rates in college and in adult life. For example, 78% of boarding school students stated that they were prepared for college versus a measly 28% of public school students. Furthermore, 50% of boarding school students go on to earn an advanced degree, while only 21% of public school students do, as stated. This translates into a long-term success, with significantly higher amount of boarding school students achieving top managerial positions in both their mid and late careers. The boarding school students themselves love the lifestyle. A staggering 95% reported that they are very satisfied with their experience. Additionally, extensive longitude research has found no long-term negative effects on boarding school students. From all that, I can conclude that boarding school does have disadvantages. But I would say that the pros of boarding school outweigh the cons, and it is worth sending your son to boarding school, as it is great character development and prepares them well for the life ahead of them. Thank you for listening.
Hello, boys, staff, and all listeners. My name is Mitchell Lewis, and I'm a Year 11 student at Christ College. I have done my investigative journalism on why the drinking culture is so bad in New Zealand. I have interviewed many boys on their thoughts on this and got some very mixed responses. Some boys say that it's normal and just part of fitting in with their friends, but others are worried how the drinking is affecting their health and relationships. Why do you think the drinking culture is so bad in New Zealand?
I like how you use the word bad. I wouldn't say that it's actually that bad. I think that compared to a lot of other countries, especially our neighbours, Australia, it's actually kind of a good drinking culture. In my personal experience, the drinking culture has been quite safe. And although people do tend to start at a young age, I think that a lot of people, especially in my world, I know that New Zealand is quite a diverse country and there's a lot of different stuff, but in my circle of friends and the people I know, I think that the drinking culture is actually quite good. Everyone knows the safeties and responsibilities around having alcohol and not abusing alcohol or having it too much. So from my outlook on life, I actually think there's quite a positive outlook.
And also the dangerous things from alcohol is either alcohol poisoning, drunk driving, or just doing dumb stuff when you're intoxicated. So that's more of a personal decision-making thing than a alcohol binge drinking related thing. So if you just don't have a car around you when you're drinking, or you don't drink excessively amount, you're not going to get alcohol poisoning. Because things like mixing drinks and mixing beers, that's just not true. There's no such thing as mixing drinks. It's just
chasing vodka with tequila. You've never done that, have you, Archie?
No, I have not done that. That's not a great start. But yes, there's just so many myths about drinking that make it look worse than it is. And realistically, most of the dangers come from individuals hopping in vehicles or something like that.
Why do you think the drinking culture is so bad in New Zealand?
I think the drinking culture is bad in New Zealand because New Zealand has a big problem with tall poppy syndrome, and that sort of ties in with wanting to be better and wanting to be the cooler person, and alcohol's sort of tied in with sort of being cool. And also I think with rugby being a very popular sport and also being a sport with a heavy drinking culture, that also doesn't help.
New Zealand.
I reckon because the marketing of it and the advertising is real big, because there's probably not as many beer or wine companies in New Zealand, so more people have to buy the bigger companies rather than go to the smaller companies. And I reckon peer pressure is also a big part of it, because it just in New Zealand, for some reason, it's just what it's meant to be from when you were young.
I don't know. People just want to get on the piss. I don't really know. Just sort of just grow up with their parents in the pub and stuff like that, and getting drinking with their friends and stuff, and then you sort of just adapt that from your parents, or like people older than you. I think, yeah, something like that.
I think it's bad because it's introduced at such a young age. But I also believe that it's gotten a lot better since potentially my parents and parents were our age. I think that they used to drink a lot more when they were our age. I've heard stories from my parents and other people's parents as well about how the drinking culture used to be, but I still think it's something to work on in the future. Yeah.
I'd say it's more advertised in New Zealand than other countries.
I like how you use the word bad. I wouldn't say that it's actually that bad. I think in New Zealand there is I was kind of excited. I wanted to drink.
My guess is that it would have something to do with the effects of colonialism in New Zealand. The British had a bad drinking culture when they came to New Zealand because they used to drink alcohol instead of distilled water, as it was quite hard to find clean water in Britain, so they just drank alcohol instead. So they brought that over to New Zealand, and there wasn't really the service to support alcohol addiction in New Zealand compared to maybe the UK, and that's probably why we have a worse drinking culture than them.
Hi, my name is Louis Tapper, and I'm a Year 11 student at Christ College. My investigation is about if Christ College has improved over the years. I interviewed Johnny Cochran, and he gave us insights and opinions of what he has seen over the years at Christ College. Here is his name and association with Christ College.
My name's Johnny Cochran, and I have been in the past president of the Christ College Old Boys Association, going back about 10 years ago, and I'm currently sit on a subcommittee of the board called the Christ College Foundation.
So we'll get into the first question. You went to Christ College yourself. You were involved after you left Christ College, and now your son Sam is a student here. That's a long time. What were the biggest difference you can see at college, and how does that affect your education compared to now with Sam, your son?
Oh, okay. Well, I think today there are a lot more options for the boys when it comes to the educational side of things.
Yeah.
And then also a lot more options when it comes to sport. So, overall the boys have more choice, which is really good because it's all about, each boy is best. And so we want to provide opportunities for people, whatever their interests are.
Yeah. And how do you think those differences have come out?
Well, I think that, again, you think about each boy at its best. The difference is that, a fella that going back, say, for when, Nick and I were at school together, may not have found success. And today they're way more likely to find something that they really get a chance to excel at. Because everyone's a bit different, and not everybody is going to be an All Black or a star hockey player or super good at maths or chemistry or something like that. So we're finding things, providing a broader spectrum of opportunities is probably the way to think about it.
Yeah, thank you. Now, when you look at the college roll, there's always been around like 600 to 700 pupils at the school. But when you look at the number of teaching staff and support roles, those numbers have increased disproportionately. Why is that, you think?
It's because we're doing more in a whole bunch of areas. So we've got a more diverse offering when it comes to education, a more diverse offering when it comes to sport, but also there's a lot of things we're doing outside of the sort of day-to-day operations of the school around stakeholder engagement. So you take, for example, on the sponsorship side of things, or engagement with old boys, or engagement with the business community. There's a lot of, or doing fundraising and philanthropy. All of those things, we do today that we didn't do 30 or 40 years ago.
Now that you look in from the outside a bit more, can you see the differences those resources are making? In short, is it good for value or money? For money.
Yeah, I think it is good value for money. So I think that Christ College is a better school today than it was 30 years ago. A much better school.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the fees have gone up a lot, but I don't know if they've gone up a lot relative to inflation over that time.
Yeah.
So you I haven't calculated it, but I think that the fees probably aren't a lot more than they used to be in inflation-adjusted terms. But I suspect, but I know that the offering is actually quite a bit better. So I think value for money has improved.
Yeah.
Actually.
Would you say that there's like a lot more subjects that you can take and everything like that?
Yes. Well, I don't think there is a few more. I mean, we couldn't do metalwork and technology and things like that. Didn't really. There's a bit of woodwork. That's about it. We didn't do. I think there's a lot. We didn't have the diploma as an example. We didn't have Immerse and Inspire as an example.
Yeah.
So, we are doing more. Of course, it all takes extra cost. And in effect, I do think the probably cost is a bit higher, but you're getting more for your money too.
Yeah. And what I can conclude from this investigation is that Christ College has improved over its time from what it used to be, and we do need the amount of teaching staff that we have today because we do a lot more at this school than we used to. Thank you very much for listening to my investigation.
Johnny Cochran, and I have.
Hello, my name is Jago Wallace. I am a Year 11 student at Christ College. Today's critical topic is electric vehicles. Are they really worth it? When I say worth it, I mean, are they as environmentally sustainable as they are claimed to be? Do they take us towards our goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions so that we can meet climate change goals? Secondly, I've looked at are they worth it in terms of costs. I've spoken to 3 locals to get their opinions on whether EVs are all they're cracked up to be. Firstly, I interviewed Mr. David Newton, Christ College physics teacher and founder of Eco Action. Secondly, David Jackson, a barrister who works as an adjudicator on the NZ Motor Vehicle Disputes Tribunal. And thirdly, I've spoken to Ben Selby. Ben is a journalist who test drives and reviews all the newest vehicles for Metropole magazine. David Newton, as a scientist, has a physics background, and as founder of Eco Action, environmental sustainability is a passion for him. Here is David Newton on key benefits relating to climate change and where technology needs to go.
Electric vehicles in New Zealand, luckily, are predominantly charged using electricity which is generated from renewable resources. So a person with an electric car can rely on the electricity going into their vehicle to be predominantly generated from renewable sources. This is not the fact overseas. In terms of technological breakthroughs in electric car technology, only in the last 6 months have we seen a doubling of the energy capacity of battery. We've also seen a tripling of the capacity of the number of recharges that a battery is able to do. The biggest battery manufacturer is guaranteeing their battery for 1 million kilometres or 15 years of recharging. This is astounding and only just occurred. People have said in the past that they wouldn't drive an electric vehicle because they had range anxiety. 1,000 kilometres of range would get you from Christchurch to Auckland, and if you can recharge them as many times as you like, then the longevity of the battery is no longer a problem either. Ben Selby is a motor vehicle reviewer, gets to drive every possible type of new car. He talks about his preferences between electric vehicles, traditional internal combustion engine vehicles, and also hybrids.
EVs do have a lot of good points. They are zero emissions, so they are cleaner, they don't burn fossil fuels, they have fewer moving parts, so they are a lot more straightforward to service. But in terms of the environmental impact, they do not leave as a little a footprint as people would have liked to think they do. I mean, you pay less at the for charging up and things like that, but what goes into the construction can be just as environmentally hazardous in terms of mining for the nickel for the batteries and also for disposing of the batteries as well. They're definitely an option. The EV market has just really exploded. In fact, so many manufacturers are bringing in electric vehicles or solely diverting their resources into EVs. It is an inevitability that we will see more and more electric vehicles around. However, we must have the infrastructure there to accompany for that. Like for New Zealand, we do have a lot of people plugging in their EVs at night. Does tend to have a bit of a strain on the grid network, and we do need to make sure we have the infrastructure there to be able to cope. However, there has, from what I've seen recently, there has been a slow dip in EV ownership in recent times, what with the introduction of road user charges by the current government. And so people are more inclined to going for conventional hybrids, which are road user charge exempt. So in terms of range, it's quite relative. Some EVs are capable of doing between 400 to 500 kilometres, which in New Zealand does help. I drove a BYD Seal recently, very impressed with the performance and how it handled and everything, but also that range of between 450, 500 kilometers, according to statistics. That will make a lot of difference, because sometimes when people have an EV, they buy an EV, they can only get, say, 300 kilometers of range. If they're going over to the west coast or what have you, they might have to stop at a fast charger on the way.
David Jackson is a barrister and adjudicator on the Motor Vehicle Disputes Tribunal, has a front row seat to everything that goes wrong with every type of motor vehicle. David discusses common complaints with electric vehicles, whether problem solving with them is more difficult, and talks about costs for electric versus internal combustion engine vehicles.
Most common problem with vehicles that we see in the tribunal relates to their battery, and in particular the battery state of health, which is a percentage estimate of the charge in a battery. The batteries themselves are extremely complex devices. They consist of thousands of very small battery cells all connected together. And if one of those cells has a problem, then the whole of the battery can be compromised. This often happens in second-hand vehicles where while the battery health might appear to be, you might call, a marketable state at the point of entry into the country, within a few weeks or months of use in New Zealand, that battery health rapidly declines, and the purchaser finds out to their dismay that in fact there's a real problem with the batteries within this battery unit. There might be a problem with one cell, there might be a problem with 500, there could be half the battery cells are damaged. That is the most common complaint that we have. It is very difficult to resolve. It's the expense of repair or replacement of a battery which makes these cases so hard to resolve. A battery unit itself can cost as much as $25,000. A repair of a battery can cost somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000. These are throwaway items in Japan, but in New Zealand less so, and we don't have really the technical expertise yet within the country, because this is new technology, to see the price of repair or replacement brought down. The traders simply can't afford the repair and don't feel that they should pay for the repair in some cases. While an internal combustion engine might not be particularly friendly to the environment, it is especially friendly to a mechanic in most cases. There is always a repair option unless the engine has entirely failed, whereas with an electric vehicle, if the battery has gone and cannot be refurbished, which is very rare in my experience, then it's a complete write-off and you're into this extremely expensive replacement.
Having heard from our 3 experts, I looked at 7 secondary sources and identified for myself some of the pros and cons of EVs. On the one hand, the rapid expansion of EVs, driven in large part by government incentives, has been crucial in helping countries like China and New Zealand make the transition to cleaner, greener transportation. However, this rapid growth has also led to some concerning other environmental issues that need to be addressed. Lithium and cobalt mining, crucial for EV batteries, has come under scrutiny due to their significant environmental costs. Reports from the Lithium Triangle region, where Chile, Argentina and Bolivia converge, reveal the toll of lithium extraction on local ecosystems and communities. Similarly, cobalt mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo raises concerns about hazardous working conditions and pollution. USA President Biden is looking to protect the domestic vehicle manufacturing industry by placing trade tariffs of 100% on Chinese EVs and wants all US allies to go down the same path. New Zealand will need to decide whether to risk angering China and our extensive trade links and access to cheap EVs, or support our old ally, the USA. So to answer the original question, are EVs worth it? It is not yet clear whether the perfect balance between the potential for improved environmental outcomes versus consumer outcomes has been struck. In my view, we are not quite there yet, but we will be soon. I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast, and that you know more than you did when you started.